He is the conscience of our party. He is the conscience of this government. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Ambassador David Comissiong. Come, David.
Good evening, Carrington Village. Carrington Village, it is an honor for me to be here in the hometown of the great George Lamming, the village that George Lamming wrote about in the Castle of My Skin, the greatest Caribbean novel. Carrington Village, that is your heritage. It is an honor to be here. Brothers and sisters, I have been involved in the political life of Barbados since 1984. Even longer than Mia Amor Motley. Longer than anybody running either on the BLP or the DLP ticket, except my brother Trevor Prescott. So I have seen it all. I was there with the Right Excellent Errol Walton Barrow. I saw Sandy Ferd. I saw Owen Arthur, David Thompson, Frundell Stewart. I've seen it all. And I'm telling you, that there is no political administration that I have ever seen that has achieved more than the Mia Amor Motley administration has done in just 3.5 years. It is tremendous. It is tremendous. You know the story. 3.5 years ago, the Barbadian people were in despair. Barbados had been crippled, brought to its knees. And in despair and desperation, the Barbadian people turned to Mia Motley and the BLP to save Barbados. And within the space of 18 months, Barbados had been put right. Government's finances were in order, were stable. The foreign reserves were close to $3 billion. Civil servants had been given salary increases, and we can go on and on. You know the story because you have heard it from these platforms in 18 months. Now, what was responsible for that? Did Barbados suddenly discover deposits of gold and diamonds and petroleum and bauxite? What was responsible for the turnaround? There was only one thing responsible for the turnaround: the intelligence, the skill, the creative imagination, the discipline, the character, the determination of Mia Amor Motley and her administration. And I have pointed out to Miss Motley, you heard her mention it tonight, the first order of business was to deal with that monumental financial and economic crisis. And Miss Motley was able to put together a team led by her, including Minister Ryan Strawn, one of the great developmental economists, including Minister Marsha Carroll, another outstanding developmental economist, including Dr. Clyde Maskell, Professor Avinash Prasad, Dr. Kevin Greenidge, and a public servant that I will include in the team. He's not a political man. He's the Director of Finance, Mr. Ian Carrington, but a very important part of the team because he brings good old-fashioned Bajan common sense and a feeling for the numbers to the team. Now, brothers and sisters, this team, with their intelligence, their skill, and their imagination, did things that were supposed to be impossible to do. First of all, you invite in the IMF and you present the IMF with a homegrown Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan. In other words, usually when the IMF comes and imposes on a country. This team had the intelligence and skill to work out a homegrown program suited to Barbados, designed to protect the Barbadian people, and they had the skill to sell it to the IMF. Can you imagine? Usually in an IMF program, the IMF gets rid of things like free education. This team convinced the IMF that you had to make an exception with Barbados, that education was so critical to the Barbados developmental model that free university education was not a luxury, it was a necessity. And in the middle of an IMF program, Barbados reinstated free university education. Unheard of. Unheard of. In the middle of an IMF program, Barbados gave all public servants a 5% salary increase. Unheard of. That is a tribute to the brilliance of the team. Listen, you remember when Miss Motley came in, one of the first things she did was she suspended all Barbados government payments to the external creditors, the international banks. And she said to them, look, we only have 4 weeks of foreign reserves. We have to protect the Barbadian people. We can't pay you. Not that we are not going to pay you, but we are saying to you, you need to sit down with us and renegotiate this debt so that it is more manageable for Barbados and it does not imperil the Barbadian people. And you remember, Delisle Worrell, the former governor of the central bank, sold his services to the external creditors. And there was a face-off. And the Motley team was so tremendous that they faced off against all of these international banks and Delisle Worrell, who obviously had inside information because he used to be our central bank governor. And who prevailed? We prevailed because you know what happened? The international creditors said, yes, we agree with you. We have to renegotiate. In fact, we agree with you. We will reduce 25% of the principal of the debt that Barbados owes, and we will reduce 35% of the accumulated interest that Barbados owes. That saved Barbados $1 billion. You understand what I'm saying? Just the intelligence, the skill of the Motley A team saved Barbados $1 million, $1 billion. And so the point I'm making is, look, for a small country like Barbados with no real natural resources, it is all about the ability and the intelligence of the people, but also of the leadership. And when you look at the quality of the leadership, when you look at the Mia Motleys and the Marsha Carrolls and the Ryan Straughns, and the Sandra Husbandses, and you can go to Trevor Press, and you can go on, and you compare with the other side, there's absolutely no comparison. So, brothers and sisters, this should not be any difficult decision. Look, even this thing about when COVID came, and the government had to respond to COVID. Yeah, COVID came and destroyed tourism, and it was a big public health challenge. But I am telling you, perhaps the greatest year of accomplishment in the history of Barbados was the year 2020. When we responded, can you imagine the brilliance of Mia Motley, the brilliance of the team? A month before COVID was declared to be a pandemic, the Motley administration decided we were going to build a COVID treatment hospital at Harrison's Point. And they came up with a brilliant strategy. We were going to develop specialist COVID health facilities that we would keep separate from the general health facilities. Brilliance again. The 12-month welcome stamp. Brilliance. The best program to save the jobs of the tourism workers. Brilliance again. The point I am making, the most precious resource we have in our country is intelligence, creative imagination, character, and skill. And that the Barbados Labour Party has in abundance. And that is what underlines this blueprint for transformation. It is all about thinking outside the box. It is about brilliance. It is about technical competence. And so there's really no choice. These BLP ministers should not even having to be talk so much, because the choice is so clear. And I'll end on this. I will end on this. The last interaction I had with Marsha Cattle before the elections were called was the week before the COP26 conference in Glasgow. Mia Motley had the initiative to bring to Barbados the executive director of the Green Climate Fund. This is the fund set up by the United Nations to funnel money towards countries that have to respond to the global warming. This Green Climate Fund that is headquartered in South Korea has tremendous financial assets. Mia brought the guy to Barbados in the week leading up to COP. Marsha Cattle had the responsibility to deal with this guy, to negotiate with him. And out of that has come the concept that Barbados will be developing a green bank that is going to have investment from the Green Climate Fund and will deploy $150 million to do social and developmental work all across Barbados. That is Marsha Cattle. Then she went to Glasgow to help negotiate the funding, the $100 billion a year that the developed countries have to make available to small developing countries like Barbados to adapt to the global warming. Marsha Cattle is Barbados's key negotiator, making sure that Barbados gets its fair share of that US $100 billion a year. We only need a half of 1%. Brothers and sisters, this is an MP. This is a minister of government who is indispensable. We cannot afford to lose her. We are depending on her to bring tremendous resources to Barbados. And there's no comparison between her and any Richard Seeley. When we had the sewage problem on the South Coast, and Seeley was Minister of Tourism. What did Sealy do? There was sewage going into the sea on the south coast. Instead of Sealy admitting that we had a problem and getting to work to solve the problem, Sealy decided instead that he was going to try to mamagai the Barbadian people. Instead of acknowledging the problem, dealing, fix it and face it and fix it, Sealy went bathing in the Jobby water, got the photographers to take a picture, and said to the Barbadian people, there is no problem. Everything is fine. That is a man of no character. You don't want somebody who is there to deceive you and mamagai you. You want a serious representative where when there is a problem, they will acknowledge the problem and get to work to fix the problem. That is the kind of representative you have in Marsha Cattle. Vote her in your thousands on Wednesday. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.